This episode is graciously sponsored by Donor Concierge. Donor Concierge is not an agency. They're a lovely group of people who scour agencies and have access to thousands of surrogates and donors and can help you handpick the right person for you. How do I know that? Because I've known them for decades. I've known Gail, the founder, for many, many years. In fact, she was with me at the State Senate Judiciary Committee's hearing to legalize surrogacy in New York. I've seen them at many fertility conferences. And I know that they have their fingers on the pulse of the industry. They know clinics, they know agencies, they really know what they're doing, and they can help you find the right surrogate or donor for you. So contact them if you need a donor or surrogate. I'm sure you'll be happy you did. You can visit them at donorconcierge.com. Today, I'm going to introduce you to a Secret Service agent. He's also an author, a father, a husband, and has a wonderful life. But life wasn't always easy for Corey Allen. Life was, in fact, very difficult before he met the Obamas. And he's going to tell you all about that, about his book, about fatherhood, and his journey to find himself. Welcome to Building Your Family. This is a podcast about donor conception, surrogacy, and the modern family. I'm your host. My name is Lisa Schumann. I'm a therapist, an author, and this podcast host, and I am so delighted to welcome today Corey Allen. He is a recent author, a recent husband, and a recent father, but he's a longtime Secret Service agent and has so much to share in his new book, Breaking Free, and so much to share with us today. So thank you for joining us, Corey. I'm so happy to have you here.
Good morning, Lisa, and thank you for enduring. I know there was some delays in trying to get this done with, as you mentioned, there was a wedding that occurred and then a baby that occurred. So it's been very busy. So I appreciate you having me on and being patient with me.
It's really my pleasure. So I'm so excited for you. I can't believe how many changes you've had in just a very short time. So why don't we talk about all of them? But let's kind of wind back. I know you wrote the book because or wanted to come out as you were an agent. And I'm sure that that was not an easy process. And now you are where you need to be as a dad and a husband. And that's fantastic. So maybe you can give us a little bit of background and how you kind of got to this point.
So I've been in government service for 23 years now. Started out the military and then local police officer, and then became a Secret Service agent in January of 2010. Transferred to Miami, did some time there, and then went back to Washington, D.C. until 2019. I was assigned to the Obamas for the last few years of my detail. So assigned to Michelle specifically during her Becoming book tour. And a lot of that resonated with me as I was grappling with my own history and figuring out who I was, my identity, and coming to terms with what that all meant and what that looked like for me and what I wanted long term. And I saw how powerful her story was, selling out stadiums across the world and having a front row seat to that. And so when I left the Secret Service to do a hard life reset, when I moved to California, I sat down and just started writing. It was hugely cathartic for me to process everything I'd been through from my childhood all the way forward. And then the pandemic hit, and I had this thing that I'd written, and then I got to plug it.
Yes, please.
I just figured, well, I've got all this time on my hands. We were all sitting at home, working remotely, thankfully, and I just decided to put it into action and put my story out there, and figured I knew there were others like me. I'm hoping that it may help somebody else to feel comfortable in their own skin and pull the curtain back a little bit, not only in a hypermasculine profession like law enforcement, but then as to help me figure out my road forward into becoming a father and becoming a husband and achieving those larger life goals that I had aspired for so long.
When did you make this decision that you said, okay, I really need to come out in the world and be true to myself and stand in my own truth? And this is not, obviously, well, I can't say obviously, but probably your career was not very open to doing that. And so you probably felt a lot of pressure at the same time as the desire to just be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I got married in 2009 to my first husband, it wasn't legal. We had to go travel to Massachusetts to do it because it just wasn't legal in the state of Virginia at the time. And then dealing with discriminatory issues, I could have been fired for coming out or, working for a Republican sheriff's office. And just, I lived separate lives. It was polar opposite of like, okay, this is my personal life, this is my professional life, and in no
Oh
way
my
will they ever
God.
cross paths. So it wasn't until I was assigned to the Obamas in 2016, and then I was surrounded by such a great group of people, my fellow agents, and of course the Obama staff and themselves, that I felt comfortable and safe. And that was after a couple of Supreme Court decisions in 2013 first, which gave benefits to my then husband, and then 2015 when gay marriage was legalized nationwide, that I
Right.
started to feel a little more comfortable in my own skin. And so 2016 to 2019 professionally, I was like, okay, they can't fire me anymore. I'm safe here. And I had great colleagues to really start talking about, hey, I'm going through a divorce. We were traveling the world together. And so they made me feel comfortable and safe. And that's where I was like, okay, this is who I am. I don't have to separate these two lives anymore. And since then, I've been promoted more than once, and I'm now leading an entire region of people. And it's great to be able to hopefully inspire other people to know that they can succeed in the profession and not only succeed, but lead and try and make changes where they're needed.
That's so amazing. Well, I don't want to get too political here, but just a little. I just want a little dose of understanding of you came from kind of a more. You said before the Obamas, you were working for a more conservative group, and so you had to kind of live this double life. How did you kind of manage that? Did you just go to work and you didn't tell people about your personal life, and you didn't talk to your colleagues, socialize with them?
100%. So
Wow.
I lived when I was a cop, I lived outside of the county. I lived in Richmond, Virginia, so I could like be surrounded by like minds and find other members of the LGBT community. And then meeting with the Secret Service because I could have been fired and I was discriminated against.
My God.
So I just we were living on South Beach and I just compartmentalized as the best that I could. And there was no way my peers were ever going to be in a gay bar in South Beach.
Right.
And so I just maintained that separate life for as long as I had to. And, there was some self-loathing that I was dealing with and just
Mm.
growing up that way. And, we were all taught and told you need to date women and this is how it is and this is wrong. And it just takes time to overcome all that and feel comfortable in your skin.
Oh my God. That's awful.
Makes us stronger people.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to look at it. Although nobody should have to deal with that. I mean, that's just so heartbreaking to me. Nobody should ever have to not be able to live their truth. It's terrible. So you were very strong. Fortunately, you end up in a situation where you were then working for people who had kind of more sensible, heads on their shoulders who could really embrace you. And so at that point, you felt like, oh, okay, now I feel like I can also feel a little bit less of this internalized homophobia. Did that soften a little bit for you when you felt like the outside world was more accepting?
Beginning to let the guard down.
Hmm.
In short, that I wasn't going to be fired in a profession that I'd grown to love so much and was thriving in wasn't going to do me in. But also like having to be a Secret Service agent protecting the most powerful people in the world, but yet having to hide who I was and protecting the Pope and
Oh, wow.
in 2016 Trump and Hillary, and so to go from those
Oh my gosh.
extremes, so yeah, I just began. They made me feel safe, and at that point, I knew they couldn't fire me for being gay. It could
Hmm.
certainly still stymie my career, so I just had to make sure I wasn't being flamboyant, and I don't think I'm a overly effeminate person, but you still have to monitor those things because there's still
Oh
going to be
my
people
God.
who, even to this day, of course, are anti-LGBTQ.
Do you feel like that now? I mean, because, in the Obama administration, you were probably feeling, embraced, and our country is not quite that at the moment. And of course, there's, murmurings and fears and shadows of potential other directions our country can go in. Do you have any feelings or concerns about that, like how things can change for you in your career if life changes in this country for most of us?
Career-wise, I'm in a safe place now. I mean, I'm leading the region. Like my boss is in Washington D.C., so I'm the top supervisor out here. So I'm safe there. But in a family regard, yes, there's a lot of fear. And I was actually on a walk with my husband and our baby last week, pushing the stroller around our neighborhood. We're safe. We live in California, and I said, "Hey, how does this feel? Like we're out pushing our baby, something I've wanted to do for so long, and I take so much
Hmm.
pride in it."
Yeah.
And he was apprehensive and fearful because of the rhetoric that's out there that somebody may take action against us because now there's no denying that we're gay because it's two men 40 years old pushing a stroller. And so he's apprehensive about it. And this was just last week. So there's still those fears of the administration changes in November and then Project 2025 and all these other, you see these,
Scary.
our rights are on the line. And, Justice Alito has talked about overturning gay marriage and the rights that we've worked so hard for so long can be denied in a almost light switch of, I provide insurance for my entire family now and all that can be ripped away.
Oh my God.
And even when our attorney for when we go through surrogacy, it's like, hey, you all need to also legally adopt your children because somebody could get elected to the governorship or whatever and then say two people of the same sex can't be on a birth certificate anymore.
Yeah.
And so we have to monitor that stuff as well to make sure that, we have the strongest footing that we can. And of course, straight people don't have to deal with that, but it's our reality. And so we just have to be prepared. And yeah, there's definitely fear. There's a fear underlying. Yeah.
It's heartbreaking, right? I mean, we think we're, and I certainly know, I mean, being in New York, I feel the same. I feel like sometimes I'm in this little bubble and the rest of the world is like, an alternate universe. Somehow it's not the same. And it is really scary to think about. We all have to make sure we get to the voting booth.
There's power in talking about it and sharing our stories, thanks to amazing people like you who have great platforms to help educate other people. And there's somebody in Wichita, Kansas right now who may hear this and be like, oh, wow, okay, there are others out there like me. I also can achieve a family.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how to go about it. And somebody on Threads reached out yesterday and replied back to something I posted, thanking me for sharing our experience because it helps them, he and his partner, through their adoption journey.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay,
beautiful.
that's what we should be doing is supporting each other and just talking about it because we normalize it. We help each other through it.
That's beautiful. Visibility is everything. It's so important.
Absolutely.
So important. Yeah. I appreciate everything you're doing and putting the book out there and getting out there on social media and talking about your story. Let's talk about that a little bit before I start to cry about the other stuff. I don't want to start crying. So let's talk about when you started this process to say, okay, I want to have a baby. Were you with your husband at the time?
We met on a cruise in 2019. It was 2 weeks after I'd moved to San Francisco.
Yeah.
I was christening myself as a Californian and doing a life reset. And 2 weeks later, I meet him on a cruise. The night after we met, sitting by the pool, that we had our first in-depth conversation and realized, oh, wait, he wants kids also. He wants to do adoption or IVF. And so we quickly realized that our family values and goals long-term aligned really, really well. And so we knew from the start that this was something we both wanted. And so it was in May of 2021 that we attended the first Men Having Babies conference.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the official kickoff to figuring this out and how we're going to go about building our family.
So then did you start looking for a clinic first? Was that the first stop for you?
Yeah, we had been impressed by like San Diego Fertility Center. Their reputation precedes them. And my husband's a physician, so he has a better grasp of like, hey, these people, I like their resume, I like where they studied, all that type of stuff. So that was, friends of ours had used San Diego Fertility as well. So just the reputation was sterling. And we were like, all right, well, yeah, they're going to cost a little bit more, but success rates are high. That's who we're going to go with, just because we could trust them based on our friends who have children through them. So we identified San Diego right off the bat. And we weighed other options, Circle here in San Francisco, but San Diego just made the most sense for us. And so that's who we decided to use.
And then you had to look for a donor. Was that a difficult process for you?
There's not a lot of Asian American women who are egg donors, just culturally, just not really done that often. And so my husband is Chinese American, so we wanted to have an egg donor that was of Asian descent, just so that way the babies look like me, look like Johnny. And that way there's connection with the grandparents as well who live here down the street. So yeah, it took a little bit of time for us to find. And as you know, like looking through profiles, it feels weird flipping through an online book of like women and looking at their genetic makeup or family health history and all that stuff of like, hey, how tall is the brother, or trying to figure that stuff out. So we found our egg donor in December of 21. So it was 6 months or so after we attended the Men Having Babies conference. That was our first round of our egg donor because we'd done it twice.
And then what happened?
I had 2 viable PGT tested embryos. And then it was like 2 weeks later, we were matched with a surrogate. It was a pretty quick turnaround. It was New Year's Eve of 2021 that we were matched with a surrogate. So we pushed through that process and had our first embryo transfer in June of 2022, which did not take. We had our second attempt in November of 2022, also did not take.
Wow.
And so we had a positive HGC test, the first one, and then the numbers declined for the second test, which was absolutely heartbreaking. You go through those 10 days waiting for that test to come back, and your hopes and your aspirations, and you're envisioning your children, and
Yeah.
your mind takes you there despite my clawing it back and trying to prevent that from happening because of the
Right.
letdown. And so I was absolutely crushed, like literally came home in tears because then I was also out of embryos. And so it was like, okay, well, Johnny has good embryos. We'll push forward. I'm like, we will have 2 of yours, period. I need to be biologically related. I've been through the adoption process as well. I'm good with it. So we just had to reconcile and like let the emotional toll, like process the grief. And he was adamant, no, we're going to create more embryos. We were like, well, there's 3 variables. It's me, it's the surrogate, or it's the egg donor. Something's not potentially working here. Let's remove one of them. So we found the new egg donor. November, December of 22, I did another round and we came out with a ton of quality PGT tested. Like I think we had 11 total.
Wow.
Like after PGT for both of us. So then we had to swap out surrogates because our first surrogate was cheating us out of money.
Oh my gosh.
That was a whole debacle. We'd lost 16 months worth of time plus
Oh my God.
tens of thousands of dollars. So then we had
How
to
awful.
do a reset with the surrogate as well. Surrogacy agency rematched us pretty quickly once the fraud was discovered, got the attorneys involved. That surrogate was just amazing right off the bat. Her vibe was there. She was so friendly and cordial and warm. Johnny was adamant that we continue to try because we're going to have 2 kids.
So you started with this new donor, and then you found out that the surrogate was taking you for money?
Correct. After we had already lost my 2 embryos.
Oh my God. And did the agency notice that, or did you know? How did you find out? Because it was probably was an escrow, right?
So I closely monitor the escrow account myself just because, I've done financial fraud crimes for a living. It was an inconsistency in a comment that she made that the agency picked up on. I was like, wait, what? Let's dive into that, talk a little bit more. And it turns out that she had, dropped our insurance and was pocketing the money. 6 months prior, was going without insurance, but claiming it every month, like signing the form and all that. And
Oh
so
my gosh.
we did an embryo transfer and she didn't have insurance at all, which means we would have, of course, been on the hook for that.
Wow.
So then everything else came into question because ethically, okay, is she honest? Is she truthful? Like I can't trust her
Oh,
anymore.
good. Of course.
So that's what led to me, honesty and integrity. And that's everything to me.
Of course. Well, and she's carrying your baby. I mean, for God's sakes, you have to trust her, right? That's the most important thing.
So it was a no-brainer. I was like, no, we're done. There's nothing we can do about it. We're not pushing forward with her.
Holy mackerel. Oh my God.
But the beautiful thing is once our agency rematched us with the new surrogate, who was amazing. First attempt, successful. Like that is Kai, who was born 22 days ago. Like that has been a beautiful process and journey compared to where we started, has ended beautifully and couldn't be more thankful for, of course, our son.
And did you have a close relationship with your surrogate?
We attended about every appointment. She was,
Wow.
I'm in San Francisco, so she was down in San Diego. So we took so many flights just to be there because it's our son. So ultrasounds and, there was a ton of appointments, but we wanted to build that bond with her and her husband and their son and make sure that like forever for the rest of our lives that we have this relationship and that she can trust us and call on us. And we text each other still, checking in on each other. And we plan
nice.
Once a year going forward, we'll all get together and let our sons meet each other and just stay in touch. So it was important to me that she know who we are and we build the trust and build that relationship.
That's fantastic.
And she is such a gem of a human being to be able to do this, to provide this gift to us that we just otherwise would not be able to have. Just speaks volumes to who she is. So we're forever thankful that she's in our lives.
That's fantastic. And what about your donor? Do you have any contact with your donor or relationship with your donor?
She actually worked for our surrogacy agency, so we knew who she was.
Oh,
So she was aware. We sent pictures to, I mean, not directly to her, but to our coordinator who works with her. The babies will have the ability to meet her, when they turn 18. And if that's something they want to explore, then they can absolutely do that.
so she's open to that.
Yeah.
And so that's great. And if you have a medical question or any other question, you can just reach out to her whenever you need to.
Yeah. And it's being transparent with our children that it's obvious that there was somebody else involved in our situation to create a child. It's part of the dialogue from day one. And that way it's normalized. There's nothing weird going on. There's all kinds of books out there to help us explain it to them. But we want them to have all the answers to their questions that they're going to have naturally.
Yeah. Were you and your husband on the same page with all of these decisions about choosing the donor, about openness, about having a close relationship with your surrogate, all of these things that you had to decide? Were you both on the same page?
Yeah. There was no hesitation. He's a little more introverted than I am. So I tend to be the one that's bubbly, not that he's not bubbly, but I'm the one who's reaching out and just wanting to have that more warmth or depth. I don't know how to phrase that. It's not that he's not that, but I take the initiative a little bit more for the touchy-feely type of stuff, I guess. I'm a little more emotional.
But he went along with it. Like he didn't say, "Oh no, I don't want to do this, Corey," or he was on board with all of those things.
Oh, 100%. He's crying in the labor and delivery room. And no. He's present and fully invested just as much as I am. But I tend to be the one that's pushing the emotional stuff a little further.
That's very sweet. So you guys decided you want to have 2 children. So now you have 1. And I'm sure you're exhausted right now being new dads. Are you thinking about spacing them apart when you'll start for baby number 2?
So we have already had 2 failed embryo transfers with technically our 3rd surrogate. So we have,
oh my God,
we're going to attempt our 3rd FET. Hopefully we think in August. So yeah, we were double tracking that's just the way the timeline worked out. So we do have another surrogate. We had a 4-month miscarriage in late April with that surrogate. So we'll do a reset.
Oh boy.
This summer. Still pushing forward. It was absolutely heartbreaking of dealing with that. I was at a conference in Atlanta, Georgia, when our surrogate called me, and I was like, "Something's wrong. She doesn't just call." Like we're close, but so I took the call, and she was absolutely distraught, and there was no heartbeat, and we were 16 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And of course, I broke down in front of my bosses. Like I was in a managerial meeting, and I immediately grabbed all my stuff and flew home, went straight to the airport to get home ASAP.
Yeah.
And that was awful for both of us to deal with and process the grief. And because we were so far along, you thought you were in the clear.
Yes.
And then to realize, not that we didn't know, but the impact of the overturning of Roe and how that can directly impact us, because our surrogate, thankfully, lives in California, but we're so far along in the pregnancy that it was medically necessary to seek treatment that is now outlawed in 1/3 of the states in the US, or if not more than that, of just how important reproductive rights are. And it was like, okay, I need to be more vocal about supporting and pushing and getting this information out. Not that I have a huge platform, but if we happen to have a surrogate that lived in Alabama or, just some other state, then she would have been forced to, our son had lost his heartbeat, and it happens in pregnancies, of course, but to think that a woman would have to go through that, not only the trauma of losing the child, even if it wasn't her, but her body. I don't need to preach to the choir here.
Yeah.
Of just the trauma of all that and unnecessarily forcing that upon women. Awful.
Yeah. It's scary.
Front row seat to just how important this stuff is. Reproductive rights for women, and just how threatening it can be to have these rights ripped away.
Yes. And Corey, how important it is for you and your husband just to make sure you and your surrogate are on the same page about those things, because it's not that, easy, certainly for anyone to terminate a pregnancy. But then when you have all these obstacles in the way, it makes it even harder. And then, if God forbid there's something wrong, it can be so terrible and complicated no matter what, but it can be even worse. And so it's so important for you guys. Tell me how you guys have been managing this, because, you've had a bunch of losses already. In addition to losing the donor, you've had pregnancy losses. And does it make you more trepidatious for like the next journey? Do you feel, is it raise your anxiety level? Because it's hard, right?
You don't ever get used to the processing of the grief of it. So yeah, we're super apprehensive. Like, okay, well, this next time around, we're not telling anybody that we're pregnant until 6 months. The build up, the letdown, it's a lot.
It's a lot
for anybody. And of course, we're not alone. There's people, straight, gay, it doesn't matter, that deal with complications and trying to get pregnant and build their family. So yeah, we're certainly super cautious and hyper aware, I guess, which removes some of the joy of experiencing these things. Of, okay, we should be celebrating, but we can't because we've had all this traumatic experience.
Right. You don't want to have a reveal party. You don't want to like celebrate the transfer. I mean, it's scary all of a sudden, right?
Yeah, it'll be our 6th FET. And so,
oh my gosh.
And, we're not upset or angry, but we have friends who have luck on their first go round and end up with twins, and they're in and out at X amount. We've had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to try and build our family when other people get lucky and fortunate. And so that's also in the background of like, we want and pray everybody has as smooth journey as possible. And we're like, why is it always us? No, we're built to handle it, and we cope and we grieve and we move forward. So it's okay, because these things are put on our shoulders for a reason, and we're able to deal with it. Some other people may not be able to.
But also you have to pay for it. I mean, it's, there are some companies that provide some sort of compensation, but for the most part, our insurance rules in this country are pretty discriminatory. There's no opportunity to just say, okay, well, that's awful. It's bad enough to have to go through this, but now you have to pay so much for it. There's no coverage for you.
None.
Right?
I work for the largest employer in the United States. There is no IVF surrogacy assistance. The only thing that my insurance is willing to cover is the cryo
of your
sperm
embryos.
or our embryos. And even that, like, the fertility clinic isn't amazing at processing things through insurance. They'd rather just bill it to you and then you deal with it. And we're seeing that with other clinics as well, dental or whatever. They're just getting lazy.
So, Corey, your husband doesn't have coverage either.
Correct. Nope. There was no coverage through his employer, which you would think, being in the healthcare profession himself, there would be some kind of coverage here in California specifically. But no, it's all based on the language of infertility. And technically, neither one of us are infertile, but obviously we can't build a family without the assistance of IVF. So it all falls on the language. And we assume the lobbyists in Sacramento are doing their job well enough that legislators are just not fixing it yet to amend the language like they have done in, I think, Illinois and New York to start to provide that coverage.
Well, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine just changed their definition of infertility to include all same-sex couples and single people. So the insurance companies should technically now start to cover it. We'll see how long that takes.
It'll be a day late and $1 short for us, but that's okay. It'll help other people.
Yeah, that's such a shame. Such a shame.
Nothing we can do about the money spent. It's fine. We have a son right now, and hopefully we'll have number 2 in 2025. So it's all good.
Well, that's very exciting. You'll have 2 children and then you'll be done.
Yes.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Well, it's wonderful, Corey, that you wrote this book and that you move forward with your family building journey. Are you planning on writing another book in the future, or?
I'm on parental leave until Labor Day. So I'm actually working on book number 2, drafting query letter and book proposal. I'm actually working on that stuff. Started on it last week. So hopefully I'll get all that done and start pushing it out to land a different agent and a new publisher who can help. I went with an independent publisher for book number 1. So I did all the PR work, all that stuff is all on me. And as you know, with a new, I just can't I can't do that again.
It's a lot.
There's another one coming, baby, or another, book and baby.
I think it's all great. The book, the baby, your wedding, the whole thing is beautiful. And I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, Corey, because you're a shining example of what everybody needs to do. It's so hard to really stand in your truth and be, the fullest extent, to quote Oprah, the fullest extension you can be of yourself, because that's what we're all here for, right? So that is so wonderful. As we wind down, do you have any advice for people who are out there listening?
There are resources available, whether it's just being an LGBTQ community or whether it's LGBTQ family building or IVF. There's organizations out there who are helpful. Just start Googling it. And I've had people DM me on Instagram or, whatever. Do what you got to do. Find the resources. Start asking questions. There are people out there
Hmm.
to help. There are resources available. But also, there's a lot of power in leaning into the vulnerability by talking about it. We all relate to that because we can all relate to being vulnerable and being
Yes.
authentic. So there's a lot of power in that. And as I've learned, you don't know who's watching you and who you're inspiring. My husband's apprehensive about a hate crime while we're out pushing our son. But then the flip side of that coin is somebody will see us and be like, oh, they can do that. Well, so can I, because now they have somebody that
Mm,
can look to and realize that, oh, it's in real life. It's not just a pipe dream. So there's a lot of power in that.
yeah, that's so true. And what about with family and friends? Do you feel very comfortable with your families and people out there in your community?
We're fortunate to live where we live. My family, a lot of them flew out for the wedding, which was on May 4th.
Oh, nice.
So to bring them out and to have mom and her husband and to be part of the wedding and to be able to give that experience to them was also, I was such a weeping mess at the
Yeah,
wedding.
that's so nice.
So yeah, our families have been great. Johnny's family is right down the street. We had dinner with them last night. It's amazing to see his parents light up, his new grandparents. Their complete disposition changes when they're holding Kai, and to be able to
Oh,
give that to them, it's their first grandbaby. It's so beautiful. It's great.
that's so beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that with us because that's such a beautiful story and it's so nice to hear. And just keep doing what you're doing, Corey. It's so fantastic to have you on. Where can people reach you?
Social media, everything of mine is at author Corey Allen and CoreyAllenBooks.com. The two places, but you can link everything through there. Of course, Googling a lot of this myriad interviews from last year all pop up, but I'm
Uh
pretty
huh.
available. And I'm not opposed to people reaching out, like DM me if you need guidance in something of figuring out, hey, how did you go about it? Like it's part of what I should be doing, and I'm happy to do so. So if I can help somebody else, I will.
That's lovely. Thank you for that so much. And it's so good to meet you. So good to have you on. Thank you, everybody out there, for joining us. I'm sure that you love the story as much as I did and feel inspired by it. And please subscribe because that's how we keep going. And I will see you next time.
And I completely, sincerely appreciate you. It's amazing that you are allowing these stories to be told. Because
Oh
how
my
else are we going to get
gosh.
them out there?
So important. So it's so important.